Hello again, Dr. Lee Newton back here with you for the fourth and final video in this four-part series about indoor air quality. This one's going to talk about indoor air quality in my office. So we had to shut down recently, the coronavirus pandemic, and then we could slowly open back up, and I'm sure there's a lot of individuals out there that are kind of reticent and resistant to want to get out in public once again. Maybe your immune system is compromised. Maybe your doctor has said, hey, don't go out unless you have to, and you don't want to go into a healthcare facility because you just don't know what you're getting into. Alright, so this video is going to focus on how clean the air is at my office. We're going to do a brief segue from this PowerPoint video to about a 5 or 6 minute clip from my office mechanical room where you will see and hear me describing the air quality control system in my office. And so let's go there now, and I'll see you in return. Well, what healthcare professional do you know that gets excited to be in his own furnace room or mechanical room? Who do you know gets excited about this stuff? I do, much better. So I'm back here in our mechanical room, and we're going to talk about, there's nothing better to talk about these days than indoor air quality. Where does our indoor air quality come from? What makes it clean? How clean is it? And how do we control that? So in this mechanical room in our office, we actually have 3 furnaces, 3 air conditioners. Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3. Out of the top of each furnace is a supply duct. Now, that is where the conditioned air, whether it's warm air in heating season or cool air in cooling season, is pushed out to the individual room diffusers in the office. And then there's also a return. You see to the left and the right of each furnace, that is where room air is sucked back. So forced air heating and cooling is simply another way of saying blowing and sucking. We're blowing air out, we're sucking air back. The filtration part of this whole thing happens on the return visit, so where you see to the left and the right of each furnace, there are filters. So again, each furnace in our office has not 1, but 2 filters, and each of them are 4 inches thick, which is a very, very thick, dense filter media. And I recently upgraded them to MERV 13. The MERV, the MERV scale, is a scale that was developed by ASHRAE in the 80s to compare how different filters work. We used to have MERV 11, which was considered actually very, very good for a commercial setting, but MERV 13 is 1 step better in the particle size down to 0.3 microns. So MERV 10, 11, 12, they're good for 1 to 3 microns and up, but MERV 13 gets down to 0.3 microns at least a 75% efficiency and is 90-95% efficient at particle sizes larger than that. So that's only one aspect of what makes our air clean. Another aspect, if we look up above, and I'll start down here at the first zone, that little dark colored box on the return ductwork, that contains a UV light. So UV light kills things. UV light kills things that we don't want to be alive, like living things, like bacteria, virus, fungus, and that sort of thing. And in the literature, there is some evidence that when we try to kill things with the UV light, people with breathing disorders can breathe a little bit better. It's not a clear-cut conclusion. In other words, there have been some studies done that haven't said, gee, you can't live without them, everybody needs a UV light. but some studies have shown that asthmatics have had better breathing experience with these UV lights. So why not have the best you can get? Now finally, if that's not enough, let's look at that duct. That duct is connected to the outdoors. Why would I want to be heating and cooling the outdoors? Well, that's not heating and cooling the outdoors, but what it's doing, it's connected to the rest of the ductwork, to the supply line, and that is fresh air. Okay, so don't let me brainwash you into thinking that I was smart enough to design this system. The building codes and mechanical codes dictate that you have to have makeup air. So when this heating system is sucking and blowing throughout the rooms, conditioning the air, it's also bringing in some fresh air, and that's the key. This makeup air is fresh air from the outdoors that's uncontaminated to mix with the existing building air, and all those factors together, the makeup air, the UV light, the MERV 13 filters on 1, 2, 3 HVAC systems are what work together to make our office air as clean as it can be. Now, other factors that are not unique to our office, but yet explain why in a healthcare setting such as ours, our air might be just a little bit cleaner than yours at home. The fact that we don't have pets here in the office. We're not cooking here in the office. We don't have byproducts of combustion. We don't have unvented gas fireplaces. We don't smoke. So all these other air contaminants that may or may not be in your own home, we don't have here. So clean air, cleaner air, the MERV 13 filters, cleaner air yet with the UV light, and your risk in our office, not only very low, you will not find cleaner air than what we've got anywhere. Okay, well, I hope that was informative. Great pains were taken, UV lights and MERV 13 filters and periodic maintenance to ensure that throughout this facility the air is as clean as it can get. And to prove that, you know, clean air is nice, our bodies like clean air, but it's not cheap. That was the bill from my recent service call. Now that's not a typical bill. I did have to replace the UV lights because they only last a couple years, and I upgraded to MERV 13 filters. So that's not a, you know, slightly less than that would probably be an every 6-month bill to keep clean air in this facility. But that's not the only item or items that make clean air. I'd also like to show you some pictures from, on the left, that's a picture of an examination room. In the forefront you see a round device with a diffuser on it. That is an individual room air purifier. The picture on the right you see a larger individual room air purifier, except it's almost like a whole house version of it. So our front area is somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 square feet, the welcome area, the optical area, and so forth, and that is set up to handle a larger area. So these filters, what do they have in common? I have 6 of the individual room air purifiers in examination rooms and other rooms where patients might be. And I have one of the bigger ones out front, as I said. So these are hyper HEPA filters. So a regular HEPA filter filters down to 0.3 microns. These filter down to 0.003 microns, so 100 times better than a HEPA filter. A better way to say it is HEPA filters to 300 nanometers, these filter to 3 nanometers. The coronavirus, for example, is 80 to 160 nanometers. I think it would be stupid for me to say I filter out the coronavirus because there are so many unknowns. You can get it from surfaces, okay? Somebody that's infected can touch a surface, the next person can touch a surface. It goes without saying, or it shouldn't, but we're also disinfecting our surfaces throughout the office every day, multiple times a day. But back to the air quality aspect of it, these filter way, way smaller than any virus particle, okay? In the individual rooms, the airflow from these small devices is sufficient enough to change the air every 15 minutes. So every 15 minutes the air is changed. It's not possible for a patient to go in a room that contains air that hasn't been changed at least once from the previous patient. Now let me add something else. These are running in addition to the office air cleaning system. Okay, so the furnaces, the air conditioners, the sucking and blowing of that, the MERV 13 filters, the UV lights, that stuff is only running when the thermostats call for conditioned air. Why, might you ask, why don't you simply make your fans run all the time and have MERV 13 filtration, your HVAC system all the time, the UV light killing stuff all the time? And the answer is as follows, okay? Consider a doctor's office that sees sick people. Now generally we are a healthy people doctor's office, maybe sick eye doctor's office, but consider a sick person doctor's office. Consider a couple adjacent examination rooms, and you can hear the patient in the next examination room, and you can hear them coughing. And they're coughing and hacking and coughing. Maybe they stop and blow their nose, and you're thinking, wow, I'm glad I'm not in that room. Well, you kind of are, because chances are that room is on the same zone in their HVAC system. And when it runs, you're sucking air from one room, you're filtering it, but then you're blowing it back to all the other rooms. So you're recirculating that air. So even though I'm not a sick person doctor's office, I made a decision to do as follows. I'm only running the office air filtration system when the thermostat calls for conditioned air. This time of year, typically cooler air. So I'm only running it. I'm not running the fan all the time because it recirculates air. These hyper HEPA filters are my way of bridging the gap between constant filtration and not knowing about the air that gets mixed and not doing so. So I feel that it's the best solution for me, for my office. This, after studying the situation for about a month, because all I had was time there for a month when we were closed, this is how I've chosen to clean the air. I'll probably go out on, I probably shouldn't go out on a limb, but I'll go out on a limb and say you will not find cleaner air in any facility than you'll find in my office. And that's kind of a bold, pompous thing to say, but I feel good about saying it, and here's why. We're not cooking here. We're not putting acrolein and other contaminants in the air from cooking. We don't have pets in the office, okay? We don't have formaldehyde and radon. This is a fairly recent renovation that we did when building materials didn't have those things. So we have as clean of air as you'll find in any office, in any home, anywhere in the United States. And my allergies have been better since I added those hyper HEPA filters, but that's a different story. Now, let's talk for a little bit before we close out here on occupant load. Occupant load, how many people a building can safely handle, is governed by building code, local zoning ordinance, fire codes, your fire marshal. So the number of people in buildings and the proximity of people to each other must be considered, especially with current social distancing recommendations and requirements. So if you take this 6-foot social distance rule, the 6-foot radius, and you quantify that, you essentially get 113 square feet per person in a facility. You should not have fewer than 113 square feet per person. You should not have fewer than that. You should not have fewer than 113 square feet per person. You should not have more people than what you'd get 113 square feet per person from in your facility. Does that make sense? So our office, excluding private areas like the staff kitchen, staff restroom, storage, so roughly 5,000 square feet. If we're all working, 8 staff, we have 4 or 5 patients spread out doing different things, we get about 385 square feet per person. So I'm comfortable with that. I feel pretty good about that. If you look at restaurant and bar occupant load, fully occupied, they may be only 5 to 15 square feet per person. Now I understand that at least locally when we're opening back up, we're going to operate at half capacity, so that's going to help. But it helps to think about those in terms of how many people in a confined area as well. Some final thoughts. Aaron Bromage is a professor at the University of Massachusetts. wrote, and I'll have a link to his website, but wrote an article, and one of the conclusions that he had was, if you're sitting in a well-ventilated space with few people, the risk is low. Specifically talking about the coronavirus. If you're sitting in a well-ventilated space with few people, your risk is low. We've covered a lot of ground in these 4 videos. We've talked about, an overview. We've talked about the particle size, home and office design with airflow and so forth. We've gone in every single direction possible. You've been a dedicated viewer / listener the entire time, and I want to express my appreciation for paying attention to this stuff. Always happy to answer your questions. Email is lee@ceassets.com. You can visit the practice website, newtonocularcenter.com, or my personal website, drleenewton.com. That'll be live around the end of June 2020. We care about your health. We care about your health inside our facility. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you soon.